Welcome to this Demonlocke devlog. Over the last few weeks, I've been cleaning up some bugs and adding quite a few small features actually. I'm excited to show those to you. After I show you the features, I'm also going to show you my new game dev process, which is something that I've been thinking about because of the mistakes that I've made on Demonlocke, the things that I've been learning. So let's get started. One of the first small features that I added was actually a suggestion by a user in the comments. They suggested that when you pick up an item, it show the item above your head. That was a pretty easy suggestion to implement, so I did it right away. Another thing that I implemented was hiding and showing the inventory when it was appropriate, so your inventory isn't always shown. But if I need to open this gate, it will pop it up, and then I can select the key here in order to open the gate. A common requested feature was the ability to choose a starter as well. The very first demon you summon. This has always been something that I've been thinking about doing. I'm probably going to be changing the way that this works because currently it just kind of shows their silhouettes. But it's a starting point, right? No pun intended. And you can choose which demon you actually want to summon into your party at the start of the game. Hopefully this will add replay value to the game. I also started working on a simple overworld menu. You can see it up here. And so we can actually look at the demons that we have. This was like a party info screen that I'm working on. Still very much a work in progress, but we can look at our demons, see their health. I also actually made the inventory. Well, you can access the inventory here, but for testing reasons, I set it up to actually deal damage to your first demon. And that brings up the point of elixirs, which you can use elixirs. Elixirs are separate from your inventory. It's just kind of, you have this global elixir number. When you find an altar in the next town, you can refuel your elixirs and then use them the next time you venture into the void. So you can see if I use this elixir, we can watch it heal our party member there. And then we can no longer access the elixirs from the menu screen. Since one of the other changes that I made is, since I want the summoners to play a support role in battle, I've made some design decisions to reinforce that. I'll still need to get this to testers and make sure that this actually gives the intended effect. But I've made it so they start off the battle with all of their mana and they don't gain mana during battles. And they can use their mana at any time, so they don't have to wait for some meter to fill up like the demons do. I've also set them to die in one hit, which also reinforces their support role. So you basically have to have a demon out to protect your summoner. If your summoner gets hit by the enemy demon, they will die in one hit. I also allowed guarding to stack, so now you can stack guarding on your demons. And I implemented bleeding visually, although I'm probably going to change the effect, but you can see the other demon has a bleeding effect applied to them, and they're taking a significant amount of damage from that bleeding. Let's watch this battle play out the rest of the way. Oh, there was a glitch. I'll have to fix that. I also implemented a swapping animation now and made it so that the demon will auto swap out if it is killed. So I actually have 2 party members in my party right now. You can see when our demon dies, the summoner automatically summons the next demon in the party. One of the other things that isn't quite as noticeable that I can't show visually was I implemented this UI stack system. And this code isn't anything super complicated. Obviously, it's only 24 lines of code, but I found it very useful when handling UIs that go multiple layers deep and then need to come back out again. So, for example, if you open your menu and then you go into your items and then you use an item, so then it has to go into your demon party screen and show that, and you can see it starting to go down different levels and then have it come back out. So I used a stack data structure for this. I just called it a UI stack. When you push a UI to the stack, it hides all of the previous UIs and then shows the one that you pushed. And when you pop it, it removes the one on the top and then shows the previous one that was before it. You could also pop twice if you wanted to go back 2 menus and not have the other one show in between. So this is, pretty simple, just an array of UIs, and then I can signal out whether the stack's empty or when a UI is popped. There were some times where that was useful. And then 2 functions, the push function and the pop function. And I wanted to share this with you all as well because it might be useful in the projects you're working on. So what is this game dev process that I'm talking about? Well, it's not a universal system. It's going to depend on your situation. However, it's a lot of the things that I've learned for me and how I want to implement what kind of a process I want to have for making games, because I want to make games and I want to do it as a business. And in order to do that, I need to have some sort of specific step-by-step process that I follow. And I'm actually currently writing a book about this process, but I want to go over it and just some of my thoughts on it in this video because it's been something I've been thinking about a lot lately. So the first step in the process is the pitch. And each step in the process, so there's this concept that I heard about called scaling risk. And basically what you do is as you see some return on the risk that you take with something, you take a little bit more risk. And so you're appropriately scaling your risk according to the return that you're seeing. And this process implements that principle through questions. And each step in the process has a specific question that you're looking to answer that says, did I get a return on the investment that I put into it? If so, then I can take the next step, which is you take on more risk in that next step. But it's designed to mitigate as much risk as possible. So the first step in the process is called the pitch. And the concept is, or the question to answer is, does this idea capture people's attention? So you start off with a pitch for your game and you see if people are interested in it. If it's a concept that they're interested in, then you might take the next step, right? And one of the best ways, in my opinion, to capture people's interest is by combining something expected with something unexpected. So Demonlocke's hook, for example, would be the expected is it's like a monster or demon training RPG, and the unexpected is there's a horror element to it, and it's summoning demons. So you kind of take something that's a little bit unexpected and combine it with something that people are expecting. So if it does capture people's attention, if you can see that people are interested in it, you can move on to the prototype. And the question here is, does this prototype hold people's attention? So you initially try and capture people's attention, and then you see if you can hold it. Are people playing this for a long time? Are they interested in it? Do they like it? And I have some notes on this that I think are important. One of the things that I did wrong with Demonlocke was focusing so much on the presentation of the game early on. I would actually argue that I combined the demo and the prototype steps into one step, and that has cost me time. And I still am not sure whether the game holds people's attention because I'm still combining this demo and prototype together. So we'll kind of find out when I get to the demo. But using a lot of lazy text and UI, so just throw in text, throw in, like I have the constraint of no text in Demonlocke, and I think that's a wonderful constraint. It has been amazing and super fun to use. But when you're making a prototype, you're wasting time. You want to see if the mechanics are fun. You don't want to see if the game teaches those mechanics well early on. So it can cost you time. Another idea that I had was teach with video. So make a prototype that doesn't even explain its mechanics in any way. Like you just throw the mechanics together and, nobody knows how to play the prototype. But then make a quick video that explains how to play the prototype so that you can teach people through the video and then see if the mechanics are good. Because it's a lot easier to make a quick video teaching somebody how to use the prototype than it is to actually implement good UI and all of the things that are required to teach them how to use the mechanics. So at this point, you're trying to find good mechanics, and do those mechanics hold people's attention once they've learned them? So then the next is the demo step, where you ask, does this demo teach its mechanics well through visuals? So this is the part where you want to remove as much of your text as possible. You want the demo to teach people well. Can I teach these mechanics easily without having to have some crazy long tutorial, right? Can I use visuals and remove as much text as possible, use good UI to teach people the mechanics? And you need to polish the prototype, and you're going to start collecting Kickstarter followers or whatever crowdfunding platform you're aiming for. Maybe an email list is enough here, but you need to start at this point. You want to be marketing your game, devlogs, whatever it is, and collecting a following. Okay. And you want to test the demo frequently with a few people, and launch the demo publicly when you actually launch the Kickstarter or whatever crowdfunding system you use. So the next step is crowdfunding. And the question to answer here is this going to make money? And this is the crucial point, right? Your prototype should only take about a week. Your demo maybe a few more weeks, so like a month or two total to get to the demo. And then you can have a crowdfunding campaign to see if you're actually going to make money. And by the time you get to the demo, you should have all of your main features implemented as well. So the game should have, it should lack content, but all of the features are in. You have an engine that you can build on, and you just need the content. So at this point, you start collecting Steam wish lists if you're going to launch on Steam. And you start with an early access, which the question to answer here is, what more do players want that I can reasonably add? Once again, we're avoiding big features, major mechanics. We're looking at content. How much content can I get in? And if you've designed your system well, adding content will make the game more interesting, right? You can add new attacks for your demons, add new demons, add new areas, all of these things that build upon your existing mechanics. Because content is a lot easier to, it's easier to gauge how long it's going to take you than adding new mechanics and features. You'll do, the next step is the private beta, where you assess how many bugs you need to work through. At this point, you want to get a lot more players, and hopefully your Kickstarter campaign will allow you to get a lot of players during that private beta as well. Early access, you can fix bugs, but the main question for early access is, what content can I add? And then fixing bugs is in the beta. Then you launch. This is just a joke. Who wants to be a millionaire? You're not going to make $1 million off of your game. I can say that and be right 99.9% of the time. But ideally, if I've followed this process correctly, by the end of it, then I will have made enough money to make another game and continue working through this process. So that's the question to answer there. And then support, you want to make sure and support your project after you've launched it. And the question to answer here is, what can I do to remove any negative experiences my customers are having? So you want to focus on the, the worst experiences that people are having. The game crashes on their system. It's not working on, AMD hardware, whatever. And I'm just throwing out random examples here. But you're looking for the people who are having very bad experiences and trying to help them with their issues. Because that's an important part of the game as well. Now, if your game is wildly successful, I guess there's another step here, which is like DLC, adding, whether it's paid or free DLC, adding updates that aren't just fixing bugs like support updates, but actually content updates. So that could be possible if your game is wildly successful. But, if you get to that point, then that's going to be a pretty obvious step, but maybe I'll add it here as well. So there's my game dev process. I will maybe put a link to this document in the description. I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to share it yet, but this is kind of the process that I've been thinking about, and I've started writing a book about this and about a lot of the things that I've learned. It's going to be a book basically talking about my experiences making Demonlocke and making games as an indie developer and the things that I've learned. So hopefully you enjoyed this and you learned something from it. Thank you so much for watching this video and supporting me. If you'd like to support me more, I have the Kickstarter page for Demonlocke where you can go follow it. There's a notify me on launch button, and as you click that button, it helps me out a ton because then you'll be notified when the Kickstarter launches, which we're still probably a few months away from that, but that helps me a ton. I also have a Godot course. If you're interested in learning the Godot game engine, you can check that out in the description. I will talk to you all later.